by fans, for fans, the Hog Style. And now, here's your host, Sean Conti.
Welcome to the Hogsty, your number one leading source for all things Redskins and the NFL. Our guest tonight played linebacker for the Redskins, and we got him on the show tonight so he can give us his take on all the front office craziness, hopefully shed some light on the Skins' current troubles, maybe even give us an idea about what to expect with the move back to the 4-3, etc. So, without further ado, please put your hands together for Mr. Robert Henson. Robert, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is our pleasure, man. Thank you. Well, I got to ask right up front, because this is an awesome opportunity for us to pick the brain of someone who's been part of the team, maybe knows a little bit more than we do. So just tell me, what's going on in your mind kind of first and foremost when you're seeing all of this craziness, all of this front office turnover? What's the big headline for you as you watch this huge transition take place?
Well, the biggest thing that sticks out to me, or that just resonates with me, has Dan turned over a new leaf? I mean, this isn't typical Dan. I mean, organization and watching it from afar and up close these last 10 plus years or whatever, 8+ years I hadn't played. It's been one whirlwind thing after another, and I don't mean that in a positive in most ways. But this has been the most positive thing that I've ever seen come out of Redskin Park, as far as change, as far as open-mindedness, as far as like Dan really saying, I'm going to get out of the way here, guys. So that would be the biggest headline to me, is Dan is really actually just going to sit back and let this thing unfold.
Well, what was the players' view of Dan Snyder? Because we as fans have our opinion, about him. Obviously, it's not positive, but you played with some characters too. You played with Clinton Portis, guys that really were Dan's favorites. What did you as a player and other players think of him?
We thought Dan was a fun guy, man. Really, more than people think. I think he was more apt at letting loose around his guys, his favorite guys. I.e. the Clinton Portis, the Robert Griffins, those guys, like they really, guys like me rarely got a chance to see him out of character and just, let loose. But those guys who were close to him knew it, and they saw it all the time. And, it's a little different when the guy's signing your checks. So, your opinion of him is going to, in my mind, Dan is an owner, and I can't really be upset with him getting in the way and not getting in the way. It's like having a brand new sports car in your garage and not have people telling you not to drive it. Like, it's your franchise. You want to drive it. You want to see it at top speed and at peak speed. So
what is the one of the misconceptions in your opinion on Dan? Because I kind of feel like there is a common theme with him. There are mixed reviews on, whether he really cares about the team or whether he wants to win. Some people differ in that opinion, but like just in general, the things that you come across the most when people give you their opinions on Dan, what's like one of the common misconceptions that is just hard for you to necessarily fight because, it's just out there?
Well, the biggest misconception is that Dan isn't a fan first. Nobody see this team succeed more than he does. I mean, Dan sat in player meetings, players only meetings. He sat in defensive meetings, special teams meetings. Like, he's always picking guys' brains about things that they would want to see or what he could add to the facilities, things that'll make them happy. I think he's a real people person when you get to the heart of it, and he's a fan. I think that's the biggest misconception about Dan, is that he's not a fan. He just wants money.
Mm-hmm.
So, Robert, to kind of move off Dan a little bit, you were around some of these guys who recently left with all this turnover. I mean, Larry Hess was there for 17 years.
Yeah.
You obviously had to deal with him because you had that injury. So you probably got to know him pretty well. You got to know Bruce because you were here when Bruce came in.
It's huge.
Can you talk to us a little bit about just those guys leaving? I mean, do you take it as a net positive overall? I mean, and the weird thing to me is you were kind of here when Bruce came in and the last big transition happened a decade ago. What parallels do you kind of see between what happened then and now, if any, of course?
I think one of the parallels that I see from then between is that, when Shanahan first came in, Bruce came in, they wanted to change everything about the culture. Like, the first meeting, Shanahan was like, you guys have been losing, and it's unacceptable. We're going to change the damn culture around here. They even repainted the building. Like, they switched the receptionist desk. Like, they did any and everything, small thing to make a difference. And I kind of see Ron doing that as far as, who he's hiring, who he's not hiring, who he's keeping, things like that. So I think that would be the biggest parallel. And when Shanahan and Bruce first came in, the people or players, we were more high on Shanahan than we were Bruce. We knew Bruce, and as far as the new research on his Tampa days and the things he did get things that he didn't get credit for. You know what I mean? So we kind of knew we were getting out of Bruce, and I think a lot of the players were down on him from the beginning, and I think he tried too hard to get them on his team, or to for him to see. But he tried too hard to get them to see he was a good guy and all this other stuff. But the players never fell for it, and I'm glad we didn't, honestly.
We could. We've done many, many, many hours on this show on Bruce Allen, as you can imagine. But what I'd like to ask you about is, I'd like to ask you about Larry Hess and the training staff, because the fans have been beaten over the head, certainly over the past couple of years, that those guys were terrible. You were there. You got traded by him. Is there any validity to the idea that the training staff is partly responsible for the rash of injuries that this team has suffered?
I would honestly say so. And I was definitely not the first player to complain. I think I was one of the first to come out on social media and say, hey, this training staff is terrible. I just got my own personal stories to go off of. I've heard and I've seen other stories from other guys, but just from my story, being told that it was a sprained knee, all of a sudden I needed surgery, and it was a minor surgery, or your meniscus is a little torn, we'll take a little bit out, and we'll have the team doctor do the surgery. Oh, by the way, your MCL was torn too in a couple places, but I think it'll heal on its own. It never did. It never healed right. A week and a half, maybe 2 weeks after surgery, I was running sprints with Ray Wright strength and conditioning. I was running 100-yard dashes, and I remember my stitches literally busting and my knee bleeding. Larry Hess, Elliot German, like those guys, man, I'm not a big fan of. It was so bad, and players who played with me know it was so bad that I went back to TCU to rehab. I went back to my college to rehab. That's how bad it was. And once they found out, they told me, like, I don't know who those guys are, but please just stay here with us, because what they got you doing is ridiculous.
So I got one quick question. Sorry to cut you off, but what just kind of got me scratching my head is when they were telling you, you needed additional work done, and this is what we did to address it, like the surgery and all that stuff. So when you were being diagnosed with the initial injuries, they didn't know until they got into the operating room what else you needed done?
Well, I had an MRI done, and the only thing that came out of the MRI was the lateral meniscus. That was it. And then once I got out of surgery, thinking that, you just repaired my meniscus, like I'm good to go in a few weeks. Like then all of a sudden, Dr. Nunziato was like, "Oh yeah, you got a torn. We found out you got a torn MCL, in a couple places. I think it'll heal on its own. If not, then we'll have to go back in. And that's exactly what it was. I flew down to Pensacola, my family and I, and Dr. Andrews did my second surgery. And since those two initial surgeries, I've had an additional two. Like, just correction. Like,
and this
correction
is after your playing
correction.
Career now too. So
Yes. So Andrews was like, I honestly don't know how to fix it. And he literally told me this out of his mouth. The most experience that everybody in the NFL go to was like, I don't know. Like, we can see how it heals.
That's awful. I mean, that's
got
to be tough for you
emotionally. Have to go back in. Yeah.
So Robert, do you think, or I wouldn't say do you think, but would it be safe to say on our end that the training staff played a significant portion or significant part in the amount of time that you had in the NFL because of the injuries?
I would say so, because I think just from and listen, football is 100% injury sport. Like, I'm not gonna blame
it's gonna happen,
hurt, anything like that, or the fact that maybe it didn't heal right. But I do know that initial surgery was crucial, and that's just going off the second, third, and fourth surgery that the surgeons told me about. They were just like that. The first one was crucial. Like, we needed to get it right the first time. But I'm not here to bitch and complain. Only playing a couple years. It is what it is. But I mean, countless guys like Richard Crawford, Byron Westbrook. I mean, why do you think those guys aren't the same after they came out of just one surgery? Like, it's so many other guys, man. That's just and that was my biggest point in pointing all that out was I'm not the but if I can be a voice for everybody else too, then that's fine with me. But
can I just ask, if you don't mind indulging me, can you just put it out there, straightforward, if you don't mind? What is this? Is this people bad at their jobs? Is this an attempt to keep costs down? What is it with the medical staff? Why such poor work?
I honestly think there was a pressure from upper management for Larry Hess and Elliot German to get these ready and get guys back out on the field as soon as possible. I know personally with me, and I heard, and this was straight out of Shanahan's mouth, my second year, when he first came in, I didn't know whether they were going to keep me after the surgery or not. So I literally went in his office on cut day and was like, Coach, what are you going to do? He was like, we think you're safe. You just sit back and chill. We want to see what we got in you. Like, so we need to get you back out there as soon as possible. Like, so I think there was a pressure, for guys to be put on the field. And, sometimes you cut corners when you do stuff like that. So
absolutely.
I don't know.
That makes sense.
I mean, the biggest training issue out right now, obviously, is Trent Williams. And just to set this up for the audience, Robert went to high school with Trent. It's known Trent since they were kids.
Yep.
So tell us, number one, what you know about what Trent is thinking right now in terms of coming back to the team, and then a little bit about what, from an insider's perspective, from the perspective of his friend, what he's really been through.
Well, I'll address the second part first. As his friend and seeing what he's gone through, it's really pissed me off personally, and I know he's pissed off because Trent is a powerful person. I call him a dog, and he, just from a standpoint of like, you can be mean to a dog, you can be cruel to a dog. They'll come home most of the time. You know what I mean? Like, they'll be okay.
It's the loyalty.
As long as from that standpoint, and just seeing what he's been through has been really more revealing to me, and just hits home with the things that I've been saying about the training staff and organization. But on the second point about Trent and his mentality, I don't think anybody can really speak to that. I hadn't talked to him in a while. He's been keeping everybody in the dark about his intentions. But one thing that I do know from growing up with this guy, having weekends, we spent the night over each other's house, going to school, all this other stuff, man, is this guy is completely loyal from a standpoint of, like, he wants to play for the same team for his whole career. He doesn't want to go anywhere else. Like, it really hurt him to ask for a trade. It really hurt him. Like, so when I see people on social media bashing him, saying, he don't want to be here, get rid of him anyway, all this other stuff. When I know, and I've literally seen and heard from this dude's mouth that he's played at 10 and was still the damn best lineman that we had on the field. You know what I mean? When he shouldn't have went back in the game in certain occasions, he did. And, you know, he gave everything, and I think he wants to continue giving that for this organization as long as he sees the proper change. And that I didn't hear that from him directly, but I know his personality, and I grew up with him, so I know what type of man he is.
Sure.
Well, yeah, I mean that's great news, and they've had a ton of change. You know, obviously Bruce Allen is gone, their training staff's gone. But we have new coaches too, so we really want to hear your opinion.
Good starting point.
Yeah, everything's new, and so give us your thoughts on Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio as the new head coach and defensive coordinator.
The biggest thing that I got from Ron Rivera, especially when he was in his introductory press conference, where he was saying that he went and watched the last 6 games on the Redskins once he figured out he was going to take the job, and he had a write-up on every play. That was really impressive from a standpoint of he took time to really get to know these players, and they're going to appreciate that more than anything. And he really believes in a player-led culture, which I really agree with, because we've been hitting on the Alabama train for so long, and those guys know the culture, and they are able to set a culture. So you look at guys like Jonathan Allen and Landon Collins and those guys, you let them be, you know, the leadership, and you let them push the team forward from that standpoint as far as the culture, and that'll change. Because that's all those guys know is winning for the most part. And so right off the bat, I knew with Ron Rivera we were going to get leadership. With Jack Del Rio, what you're going to get from players that I know who play for him, simplicity. It's going to be three-word calls, and you're going to play fast all the time. So the transition to a 4-3 should be very, very smooth. You know, Montez Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan, a stalwart on the front line, but there's no way I want to ever see those guys in coverage. So
you and me both.
No.
so just let those guys rush, man. Just let them go, man. So I think it'll be a smooth transition. I was very excited.
Do they have the personnel to do for the 3 linebackers? Do they have a Mike linebacker? You know, who's the Sam, who's the Will out of this group that they have?
You were a middle linebacker, right? I mean, like, you look at these guys that we have, who goes where?
I mean, to me, Reuben Foster is the most talented by far, but...
Exactly. I got a lot of flack for this early in the season when I said Holcomb is going to be a legit player. And when you know he picked up and he got it and he's figuring it out. I mean, still, we got a lot of work to do to become... I mean, it's hard when you come from a guy like 59, you know, London Fletcher, you know, and you go into a rookie in Holcomb or a new guy named like Bostic or... honestly, I would put Bostic in the middle. I liked him. I hope they bring him back. I think he was tough, physical. He did get a little lost in coverage every now and then, but Holcomb definitely has to play the weak side. I don't think he has upper body strength to consistently get off blocks. And then you put Reuben Foster right on that strong side and let him go to work. Let him be a dog.
Okay.
Yeah. Beautiful things will happen. Okay, this is amazing. This has been great. Thank you so much for being here. We kept you way over your time. I knew we were going to do that.
Fine,
okay.
bro.
Just making sure. Now, look, we got a long off season. Can we have you back in the future again before the season starts up? Talk about all the stuff that's going to change?
Oh, yeah, I'm excited, man. You know, draft time is one of my favorite times of the year. I start getting that itch to record my own podcast or do something.
Right.
You know, the draft is – I'm anxious to see what they're going to do as far as not having a second-round pick. You got to trade up. You got to do something. You got to move something. I'm not a big fan of them moving back out of 2. I think Chase Young has definitely helped. I love RK. Superman's my guy. He was there my second year. Yeah, he came in. So, but I think it may be time to move on.
Him.
Yeah.
If you've got another minute,
If
you got another minute, I got another X's and O's question for you. Then,
yeah, sure.
You know, if they're going to the 4-3, it seems to me that between Deron Payne, John Allen, Matt Ioannidis, one of these guys has got to be out of the rotation. How do they handle their transition to that?
Well, not out of the rotation necessarily. You keep them in the rotation, but you're definitely going to have to pick the guys that you want to start. Obviously, you got to put Payne inside. he's got to be the big guy to eat up the blocks, the 3 technique.
Mm-hmm.
I can see Jonathan Allen in pain doing it. I can get this wrong as far as the 2 guys. Somebody does lose out in terms of starting, but as far as the rotation, that is a nasty rotation inside, especially if you got speed coming off the edge.
Mm-hmm.
So we're thinking then Chase Young, Montez Sweat on the edge, some combination of Payne, and then Ioannidis and Allen, rotating in and out, I guess what you're saying. And then we've got Reuben Foster as the Sam, Holcomb as the Mike, and then somebody unknown possibly at the will.
Well, yeah, Holcomb. I would put Holcomb on the weak side. I just don't think he's very adept at getting off blocks. I would let him just check that backside for a cutback.
So Bostic, as you're saying, if they bring Bostic back, then.
Yep.
I mean, they got some good depth with guys like Clemens behind them too, which is going to make it interesting.
I would love to see him take the next step. It looked like he kind of did in preseason, but
they didn't even play that man in regular season. I don't know what it was. He
didn't get much burned in the regular season. Yeah. So I like Sean Dion Hamilton, not just because he wearing that 51, man.
He looks very much like you. Like he's got the same physical build and everything.
I'm a little biased from that standpoint. Whoever wore that number got my love. So,
As it should be. Makes sense. Okay, well, on that note, we'll go ahead and let you go get back to your life here, man. But we would love to have you back again. And on Twitter, let me make sure I get this right. It's Mr._Henson51. Yes, on Twitter?
Correct. Yes,
beautiful.
Sir, that's correct.
Awesome. We will send you a link to the show. We'd love to get you to tweet it out too. But honestly, again, thank you so much for being here, man. This has been great.
No, I appreciate you guys.
Appreciate it, Rob.
I'm a fan now, so appreciate you guys giving me a platform to get my message out.
If you ever need to vent, just let us know. We can find some to put you on.
Hey, listen, there's no question I'm going to be bugging you to come back on the show soon, okay? I'm the guy who bugs people
you bug
to
everybody.
come on. Yeah.
That's
anything for a box of Crustios, man.
All right.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, Robert, man.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Yep.
All right, so he is
all right. There he goes.
He saw the thing behind me.
Yeah, that's right. Alex actually has a box of, what did he call it? Is it actually Crustios?
I forgot. I was wondering why he came up with that. And
it's a novelty Simpsons cereal box that I have on my weird shelf behind me.
We're doing this on Skype, folks, and so Robert has a view of Alex's shelf behind him, which has a Crustios box behind him.
Yes.
That's right. You got to be careful what's in the background when we have guests on.
I mean, that's been in the background for
See, Sean is smart because he blurs the background.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Can't see nothing.
It's actually not blurred, Jamal. I just live in an out-of-focus apartment. That's true.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
It is Denver, so
Yeah, right. It makes sense. But no, this was awesome. It's not every day you have a pro linebacker on the show that played for the Redskins. We had that today. So what is your guys' biggest takeaways from Robert's interview?
First of all, the dude was brutally honest, and we immensely appreciate honesty on this show, saying exactly what you think and what you feel, and he did that. He did not hesitate to criticize the medical staff, because I think I, for one, have been a bit of an apologist for him, over the years, and saying, these are players that just got hurt. Well, he just destroyed my theory completely.
Well, he really
and he lived it. He lived it himself. That just blew my mind. I've heard him. Yeah, I've heard him say before about the MCL thing, and that boggles my mind that you can blow a diagnosis like that. Unbelievable.
And that was kind of what was getting at me. That was actually the first time I didn't know about it, but like the way he was portraying it, I was like, there's no way. And he was being nice with it because, he didn't want to put necessarily 100% on the blame, and that's completely fine. I understand. But the medical staff or training staff, like, they played a large portion or a large piece in him, having a short career. Like that, injuries like that are significant, and not be able to diagnose it initially and find that in the operating section, like that's completely that's not.
Yeah. I mean, that's gotta be rough for a guy like him. Because you play your whole career, high school, college, hoping for that shot at the NFL, and it was cut short.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's literally what I was getting at, because it's you do exactly what you said, Alex. And then because of things that leads up to being unable to compete because of the misdiagnosis, and then the corrective actions that weren't effective initially, you lead to, it plays a part in you not being able to come back 100%.
Yeah, and I'd love that he put a little more meat on the bones of this accusation or indictment against the medical staff. He actually went so far, and that's why I asked that clarifying question. I was like, explain why, because that's one thing that a lot of people have talked about, but they haven't talked about why it's this way. They talk about misdiagnosis. Yes, medical staff is poor, lots of injuries. We know this, but why? And he actually said, well, the answer is there's so much pressure to get these guys on the field. They're rushing them out before they're actually ready. More injuries are occurring. It at least makes sense and kind of gives some explanation and clarification about why
and it's
this
totally
is happening.
Logical when you think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he threw a name out there that I didn't know, and I didn't want to interrupt his flow by asking him who it was. So it's not just Larry Hess. I think he must have been talking about the head trainer or something, or Hess's, subordinate or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was that was great. The Trent Williams stuff, great. Again, we asked him that because we knew that he grew up with Trent and he knows Trent, and hasn't talked to him in a while, but all the same, I thought was insightful is that he told you that Trent wants to stay with the same team. Mm-hmm. So that makes me a little bit hopeful now that they've replaced the entire strength staff got fired. If you didn't realize this, it wasn't just Larry Hess. They fired all of them.
Right.
And they have a new trainer now, new medical physical therapist consultant. Everybody's new, and Bruce Allen's gone. And so what he said made me a little bit more hopeful than I was that maybe Trent would come back, which then opens up a whole bunch of new possibilities in the draft and will make me stop bleeding about not drafting Chase Young.
Well, I still suspect Steve's going to write at least 2 columns about we need to draft a left tackle no matter what.
I might do that just to be cantankerous.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's half your joke, right?
It is half my joke. Don't tell people that. They're supposed to figure that out on their own.
Well, sorry, I've dealt with you for a decade, so I know it better. The thing that I kind of was surprised, or not surprised, but interested in, was his reaction when I asked about the whole parallels between this change now and 10 years ago, and he didn't say this in a negative way, but there's a lot of parallel language from what we heard or what they heard when Shanahan and Bruce came in, and what we're hearing now with Rivera, and that is we need to change the culture, we need to change this, change. We saw it with Shanahan a little bit, yeah, but I mean, did that change work? In the end, no. Which is, I think distressing because that, you have to wonder, well, what's going to work this time?
Well, but Alex, there's a big factor. Bruce Allen, we're not just making this junk up. When we've been bleeding on about Bruce Allen for months and years on the show, and I'm writing all these letters to Dan Snyder, he truly was terrible.
Oh, I know.
I've seen a lot of good and bad leadership in my life, and he's awful. Yeah. And I think you kind of heard that, from Robert. And I thought the other thing was
he did say players never bought into Bruce, which is interesting.
Yeah, but they did buy into Dan.
Yeah.
And which is what we've heard from others, that, we don't hear players criticize Dan Snyder. It's just the fans. And Dan is not a very good leader, in my opinion, either. And he's made a ton of mistakes. But one thing that I think we can say, and Robert confirmed it, is that he's been pretty good to players.
Yeah.
He's a player's guy. I think that's obvious. Yeah.
And here's one thing, though, to what Alex is saying that I think is essential in this entire conversation. When Shanahan got here in 2010, and Rob said what he said, right. The drastic change we're talking about football wise, the drastic change that he made, and speaking about how he said that they were essentially losers. The culture here stinks, so we're going to make drastic changes. And one of the things that he did was blindly change it to a 3-4. Now, the thing here is there was literally nothing wrong with the defense. That wasn't an issue. I mean, there was some things like you worried about sacks, at one point in turnovers. It's been 11 years. I don't really remember specifically. But the defense statistically was good in yards and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But when you go this year, you're going to a new decade. We've been saying for a long time there was no need to change the 4-3. Change the 4-3. Yeah. We're going back to the 4-3. Ron Rivera understands that there needs to be a lot of changes here. How drastic is he making the same thing? Like, how drastic are his changes? And how do we know that he is going to be changing things for the better? I don't think we do know. And I kind of answered my question in itself, but it kind of points to the fact that, Shanahan had the same mindset coming into his job, and he was allowed to do some things. But at the same time, you're having another coach that has the same things, a winning coach, somewhat winning. Shanahan won more. But you know what I'm saying? It's just something that's very similar in the same way, like you said. And it's just some things that you want to that I would question because of the fact that Shanahan operated in a particular way that's kind of very familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you made a great point. One question I wish that I had asked Robert just then was, because we heard him talk a little bit about the 4-3, and he said, man, it's going to be nice to see Kerrigan not dropping into coverage. Man, it's going to, he said some general things like that. I wish I'd asked him more specifically about kind of the merits of the 4-3 in general versus the 3-4, rather than just in the context of this team, because I think partially that's what Jamal is getting at. He's like, here comes this new coach. He's making big, broad stroke changes. How is this any different than the last time? Maybe we should be thinking a little more carefully about these specific changes he's making. I think that's a valid point to bring up. So,
I favor the 4-3, but I think it's a fair question to ask. Like, is it really necessary to make broad and drastic changes similar to what Shanahan did? And I don't know if it's. I think it's fair. I don't know the answer, and I said that already, but I think it's fair to ask that question because some things may be unnecessary in my opinion. Don't know what, but it just appears like some things may be unnecessary given the fact that we've seen this before, and Robert kind of confirmed that to a degree.
Well, and we've had this discussion before, but the 4-3-3-4 thing, as much as we like to talk about it, you're in a nickel coverage most of the time now anyway. It's about, with most teams in the league, it's about 2/3 of the time, or 60% of your snaps, you're in some kind of nickel coverage. So really, it's the only difference is when you say 4-3-3-4 at that point is having your ends rush all the time, or are they rushing some of the time?
Well, that's really the key, and I think if you look back, and we talked about this a little bit before, but Ron Rivera at Carolina ran more sort of a hybrid 4-3-3-4, and what you heard Robert say on the show is what we've all said at times is there's no reason under God's green earth why Ryan Kerrigan and Montez Sweat should be rushing.
Should be dropping back.
Should be dropping back in anything but the minimum amount of time. And we got a picture of what maybe the 4-3 could look like next year. Mm-hmm. The linebackers, they don't have a middle linebacker. Robert mentioned Bostic. Bostic's not on the team. They don't have a valid Mike linebacker. Yeah, Cole Holcomb. We've seen him. He's been a great. He had a decent rookie year, but we saw him have problems in coverage. Mm-hmm. You don't want him dropping back in coverage. Not strong enough to be the Mike linebacker, which is the middle linebacker. They may need to draft somebody. Unless they can get Bostic back. So I think what we see is Robert Henson, Reuben Foster, strong side, somebody who's not on the team, Mike backer, Cole Holcomb, weak side, and then you've got your Montez Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan, Chase Young, and then in the middle some rotation in which Payne's going to be there all the time, and then Ioannidis and Allen are going to be rotating in and out. I guess.
Let's talk about the linebacker. The one thing I can trust, Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio, and you just mentioned they
linebackers.
Their linebacker coach. Didn't they sign a guy today to be linebacker?
Yeah, they signed Steve Russ, who played with Air Force, is the new linebackers coach as we went on the air. That was announced.
Right. So, and he has 2 Super Bowl rings as a linebacker, right? So,
correct.
So they have a lot of very successful linebackers on this coaching staff now. I'm going to trust these guys to maybe go find a guy who can play middle linebacker. Maybe that's naive of me, but I'm gonna have some faith there.
That's not naive.
Yeah, I feel like It's almost like we fall into a trap, I think, talking about the 3-4 versus the 4-3, because I think partially what Alex is saying is true. It's like you're not even in that package most of the time. So it's kind of like you're arguing over what to call yourself. It's like a semantics thing. Partially that's true, but it also speaks to the kind of personnel you're targeting, right? And 3-4 personnel need to be way more dynamic generally than a 4-3 personnel needs to be. The 3-4 is generally more confusing, right? So 4-3 people are generally more locked into their role. So it just seems to me like that's the way we need to think about this. This is going to be simpler for the Redskins to execute on than a 3-4 is,
At least in the front seven, yes.
Yeah, it's simpler. That's what I think the key is here. Simple.
Yeah, I mean, it is simpler. You can do a lot more with the 3-4 if you have the personnel in terms of exotic blitzes and coverages and whatnot.
But
the
you
one
need
thing
that
we're
nose
missing,
tackle. You need those two edge rushers.
And we've never had the two gapping nose tackle in 10 years. But to me, what they're really, really, really missing now is what we just talked about. They do not have a middle linebacker. A 4-3 middle linebacker has a certain body type, certain skill set, which we do not have.
We haven't had it in 10 years.
No, I mean, London Fletcher was the guy. I think if they had to go today, I'd put Reuben Foster there as of a lack of somebody else to put there. But they really need to draft or sign a real and true 4-3 middle linebacker to make this whole thing work.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what's crazy? As soon as Alex said Luke Kuechly, this is going to be. I lost my point. I forgot what I was going to talk about.
It's got Luke Kuechly on the mind now. That's it.
Yeah, I'm about to say I had something I really wanted to say and I forgot.
Now you just got Luke Kuechly, slow motion, long hair blowing in the wind in your head or something.
No, not even that aspect. We were just talking about a different part of the defense. So now I'm like, damn,
sorry.
I do not.
Well, let's go to secondary. Because what Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio, they do like to cover 3. And they do run cover 3 a lot, but both those guys have run a lot of cover 2. Mm-hmm. Cover 2 meaning when you have 2 deep safeties, the corners cover the flats, and then you've got that will linebacker would be Holcomb drops back into coverage and on the underneath. That's sort of the cover 2 in a nutshell. And if we see more of that, that's probably good. We don't have a dynamic enough safety to really play free safety in any sort of adequate way. And so to me, that's better. And if we've got corners that lack, Fabian Moreau, Josh Norman, those guys, a cover 2 may be better for them. So I'm hoping to see more of cover 2 next year, assuming we don't draft. Who's the kid from Ohio State, the stud corner?
Okuda.
Okuda, yeah. I mean, he opens up a lot of doors, but beyond him, I think cover 2 may be better for this team, just from a personnel standpoint.
I just don't know if Landon Collins fits a cover 2 as well as a cover 3.
Well, I mean, look, he's a professional safety.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the range for it, but he can drop back into deep zone. I mean, they cover halves of the field. So I hear you. I don't disagree with you, but the dude's making $84 million. You got to figure it out.
Yeah. It's just that actually is a interesting, if you want to get into the X's and O's, like how do you best build around what you have now talent-wise?
What you do is you draft a safety.
Yeah.
Well, wait a second. Yes, he's getting paid $84 million, but we can't do that square peg and a round hole thing majig with these players. I mean, that's how we got in trouble with Josh Norman. Like you did pay him, but you want to pay him to do what he does best. Like you don't want to increase his role and make him a vulnerability on the field. You want to make sure that he does what he does best on your team. He just got a pay raise. That's all it was. You want to make sure that he's the elite player on your defense, doing what he got paid, what he got known for in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I think that's important for Landon Collins moving forward. So yes, he's a safety, but I also feel like if they have a particular role for him where it doesn't include him having to play one of the deep safeties or deep in the, you know what I'm saying. But if that's what they're asking him to do, then that will be a mistake.
That's Jamal's way of saying, "Shut up, Steve. You're wrong."
and you're right. I mean, he made a good argument.
No, I know. Look, Jamal's right. I mean, Landon Collins first and foremost is a strong safety. He's 3/4 of a linebacker, basically. Mm-hmm. He's certainly better in the box. I guess my point is, from a lack of anybody else, if they play cover 2, he's got to do it.
I got my point now. I remember. Go ahead.
Go back.
No, go ahead. If you remember your point, by all means, get it out.
So it was kind of where a couple minutes back with my point. That's why. But anyway, I was just saying, yes, we're in nickel a high percentage of or majority of the time. However, base defense is very important. You're going to need that in certain football situations. So just because that majority of the time you're in the nickel, that percentage that you're in base is just as important, because this is going to determine a lot of short down and distances. This is going to determine how you're going to stop the run. This is going to determine your goal line situations, defensively, red zone situations. That's one of the things that I think that when people say that, and I'm not saying anybody's wrong because you're still right technically, but when people disregard the fact that you're like the base defense is not used majority of the time, because it's not like, just because it's not majority doesn't mean it's not important. It's very important, and that's why I think that for this team, that 3-4 versus 4-3 argument is very valid and important, because that 3-4 was not working.
Yeah, because from an X's and O's standpoint, what the 4-3 even in a nickel package will mean is you've got Sweat and Kerrigan or Kerrigan's replacement not dropping back in coverage very often, and what will happen is you pull that weak side linebacker out and replace them with a corner, with a DB, to better go in coverage. So the DB goes onto the strong side. The linebackers shift their gaps a little bit. But fundamentally, you have Montez Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan / somebody, Casanova, McKenzie, chasing somebody on the other side, rushing all the time. Whereas in the 3-4, what was happening was Montez Sweat in particular was constantly dropping back in coverage.
Yeah.
And that's no good. You got to have that dude rushing the passer.
Yeah, I feel like they had him drop back in coverage more in one game than he did all year in college.
I watched his college film. He almost never dropped back in coverage. I wrote 3,000 words on the guy.
And I think Jamal brought up a great point, and something I don't know if anyone's ever done an analysis of this. And Steve, you're a stats nerd, so maybe you have seen something. How often are people really in base defenses in those key third and short downs versus, a nickel? Like, I know it always depends on what the offense puts out there, but I bet that's where you go back to your base packages more. Is if it's 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, you're probably putting 7 men in the box again.
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, I think that's generally right. I think teams are in nickel more often than they are their base defense for the most part, generally speaking.
Yeah, it's definitely a safe assumption. I kind of believe that too, that they're in the nickel majority of the time.
Oh, sure.
Especially
there's
teams,
stats of that. Yeah.
Some teams are doing it more than others, Also, the Redskins, never, look, I mean, Josh Harvey Clemens was the nickel backer and he never played, basically. But on the other hand, the New York Giants, when Landon Collins was there, they constantly had Landon Collins fill in that role.
Right.
That was almost Landon Collins' primary job, was that nickel linebacker sort of role. So it depends on the team. But I just think what's important with this discussion is that the 4-3, no matter if it's a 4-3 nickel or not, you're going to see these two defensive ends, Montez Sweat and whoever, rushing the passer a lot more.
Yeah,
and
that's the
nobody
key.
think that's not a good thing.
Yeah, and can I just say, in terms of looking at other teams that use the 3-4 successfully, doesn't it seem like they use the 3-4 only when it's like they don't install it and then find players for it. If they find themselves in a situation where they've got strong 3-4 personnel, they start using it. And as soon as they lose one of the key pieces to that, they stop using it. It's like that's what the Steelers have done. That's what the Patriots did for a while. It's like you don't install the 3-4 first and then try to find people to plug into it. It's like if you've got it, then it can be a very creative package to use, and then you go nuts with it. I think that's the problem we had.
The foundations of the 3-4 were in finding players no one wanted and making them useful. I mean, it was the whole concept of a tweener, a guy who's not quite big enough to be a defensive end, but too big to be a linebacker. Those were your outside guys. And they were picking them up off the street back in the old days. That was the whole point of the 3-4 was, hey, this guy's too fat to play defensive tackle. Let's just make him the nose. Hey, this guy's too big to – like, if you're going to say we're building a 3-4, suddenly that value proposition's gone.
Fundamentally, what's different is between the 4-3 and the 3-4 is the gaps the defensive line is playing in, okay? in the
You have to have a big fat nose tackle, though.
and that's the zero tech. Okay,
Yeah.
if for those of you who don't understand this, when you hear people like Robert mention it, was talking about three techs. Well, a zero tech is the guy who lined up right over the center.
Right.
That's
And he's
nose
covering
tackle.
two gaps at all times.
Sometimes the Redskins never had it. The Redskins never played that way because they never had anybody who could do it. They had a one gap nose tackle, which is not really the intent.
That's not really anything. Yeah, that's
well, it's just
It works in a 4-3. It doesn't work.
So in a 4-3, the three tech is going to be lined up just outside the guard, and that changes your gap. So your middle linebacker is kind of in the middle. So it changes the gaps, and so that's why the personnel is important.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. I have a feeling that this is not going to be the last time we talk about the 4-3 versus the 3-4 this offseason, so maybe we should table it for now and talk about some other stuff.
Well,
now that we have
by
an
the way, we
expert
got more technical
to.
than we usually do. We should do that more.
Yeah,
we have an expert in the fold we can reach out to at any time.
Right.
We may hear more about it from somebody who actually knows rather than us just spouting off mindlessly.
Well, y'all got my number. I'm in a group chat with y'all. So
I thought you played defensive back, man.
I don't look. I tell nothing. I played everything. I was an athlete.
All right. Well, have we had any opportunity, and I don't believe we have, to talk about on the show these coaching hires that have happened this week, from Del Rio to the offensive coordinator stuff? I mean, we haven't talked about any of this, have we? I mean, some of it's new, like today.
Yeah. So first of all, since our last show, Jack Del Rio was announced officially as a defensive coordinator. We know that. Just today, Albert Breer and a couple other guys, the insiders at the national level, claim that Scott Turner, who is Norv Turner's son, has reached an agreement in principle with the Redskins to be the offensive coordinator. The team has not announced that yet. We talked about the new linebackers coach, Steve Russ, who played with the Denver Broncos, and he was a coach at Air Force. And
medical staff hires.
Now, what they did announce is Dr. Vermillion is the team physical therapist. He was with Carolina, the Carolina Panthers. So this is Ron Rivera kind of getting the band back together a little bit. I think the big name we need to talk about is Scott Turner.
Yeah.
I personally haven't spent enough time on his scheme to have anything substantive to say about his scheme, except to say this. He did a good job with Cam Newton. Okay, Cam Newton, if anybody didn't notice, became the NFL MVP before he screwed his shoulder up. Cam did kind of okay in the NFL, and Scott Turner's working with the dude every day. So for those of you who are peeing all over this hire because it's Norv Turner's son, I think you need to give him a chance and recognize what the man accomplished.
Yeah, I think people are probably reacting to the fact that this is like another name from the past come back. This is what you didn't want to see the Redskins do. Reach back into that well of yesterday and come up with it.
Bad?
No. It's not.
He can call dad and say, "Okay, what do you think?" Isn't that a good thing?
Right.
Yeah, it's right. Exactly. I'm only speaking to, I think, when you reference people pissing on this move. That's what it is, really. Because I think you're right. It's not. This is not something to be afraid of.
Now, I think that. Oh, sorry, Jamal, you go first.
Well, I'll be quick anyway. But yeah, I kind of agree. I'm not necessarily for or against the move in the sense that we're facing a situation that we're not certain about what you can get from a Scott Turner. And it's the same thing that you see from Kevin O'Connell. Like, you didn't really know. The only difference here is that when you look at Scott Turner's situation, it's going to be far much better than Kevin O'Connell's, given the aspect that Kevin, if he would have come back, he wouldn't be having any familiarity. He'd be with a new coach, new head coach. He will have new staff offensively. These are people that were hired by Ron, and nobody that he really had a say-so in. So he will be joining an uncomfortable situation. Either you make it work as a professional, but you still will be joining an uncomfortable situation because you don't know these work styles. You have to get along with them for at least a year. But Scott will be coming in a situation that's a little bit different, and goes in his favor in the sense that, and more so that he has a relationship with at least a few coaches. Obviously, it's not the end-all, be-all with him. I think the quarterback coach is also somebody that you want to look into. I don't know who that's going to be, but at the same time, I think that when it comes to Scott Turner, you could probably just wait and see. But the quarterback coach can do a lot when it comes to developing the quarterback himself, obviously.
I think you're absolutely right there. The thing that I think people are harping on a lot right now is, this is going to mean a different offense for Haskins, in his second year, which we all know that's probably not ideal. And, said from the beginning, hey, you drafted a quarterback with a lame duck coach. That's not a good plan. This will happen. So now it's happened. But what we can look at with Scott Turner is, when we talk offensive philosophy, and, this is something I know I love to talk about, Steve loves to talk about. Jay Gruden had this system that was a kind of West Coast, but very vertical heavy offense. We knew it was a complicated offense. Everyone said it takes about a year and a half to learn. We heard that with Kirk Cousins, with Colt McCoy, all those guys. Steve, you talked about Rivera's scheme that he ran from 2012 to 2017 when he had Mike Nolan, and then he brought in Turner. And Turner, North Turner, we should say, not Scott Turner.
Turner's an Air Coryell guy.
Yeah, he's an old school Air Coryell, 2 back, run it up the gut, I form, and then play action guy. So, and you have to look at Scott and say, well, this is what your dad did. I'm assuming this has a heavy influence on your mindset because, you grew up around it.
Well, let's be clear about what we're talking about here, okay? Now, the West Coast offense is definitely a system, a way of calling plays, okay? Right. The Air Coryell, the way plays are called in the Air Coryell system, it basically is establish the run, take a lot of deep shots downfield. This Earhart-Perkins system I was talking about is really a method of calling plays, not so much the style of play that can be done. Right. Notice that what the Patriots have done over the years, who were the pioneers basically of the modern version of Earhart-Perkins, they've gone from almost a West Coast offense style system at times. They've gone no huddle. Mm-hmm. When Randy Moss was there, it was a downfield constant. They
went air raid, yeah.
They went air raid. They went to a run. They've gone to being a running team at times. This Earhart-Perkins is a way of calling plays, really not so much the offensive philosophy. Okay, right. And so I think you can marry the two and bring Scott Turner in and use Rivera's chosen system.
And I'm assuming that they were doing that, in Carolina.
So. Now, we forgot to mention the other rumor here. Just today, we're recording this on what day is today? Tuesday.
Yeah.
Supposedly, the quarterback coach is probably going to be Ken Zampese, who was the quarterback coach at Cleveland, and then the offensive coordinator in Cincinnati before that. So that's a venerable name in the NFL too. Ernie Zampese. And of course,
you forgot his most recent glorious role with the Alliance of American Football, which folded mid.
No, I didn't forget it. I just ignored it.
It was a purposeful omission.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Awesome. Anything else about offensive coordinator stuff? We are running a bit out of time. We want to talk about playoffs for a couple minutes. So let's throw out any other thoughts about offensive coordinator. We have plenty more opportunities to talk about that.
No, let's go playoffs.
Yeah.
Well, shout out to Luke Del Rio. I don't know how late I am, but apparently he got a job either I guess today for offensive quality control coach for or I don't even know if it's a coach.
Luke didn't want to work right under Dad. He went to the other side of the ball.
Yeah. So I mean, congrats to him. I don't really know him, but I just happened to see it. So
welcome aboard. Yeah, welcome aboard. Okay, awesome. Cool. Let's talk for a couple minutes about the playoffs because they are in full swing now. Quick question to you guys, my fellow Hogs. Anybody else pulling for the Ravens right now through the playoffs?
Yeah. Oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm mildly conflicted because that means RG3 will actually get a Super Bowl ring, but
that's nothing against RG3. It's in the past. I'm over it.
I know Alex is trying to start some trouble.
Yeah,
I'm cool with it.
For me, I'm rooting for the Ravens to massage my own ego because I was an early champion of Lamar Jackson, and that makes me feel good about myself. So that's why I'm rooting for the Ravens. It's really just to benefit myself.
Also, I'm rooting them for them because they're just fun to watch.
They're fun to watch.
So I've been a Ravens fan all my life. I don't look. I root for winners, man, and believe it or not, I've never. Yeah, look, trust me, I got the facts. I don't have no pictures in my Redskins gear. You know what I'm saying? I don't go to the games. You know,
That's right.
It's all about the Ravens, man.
Yeah.
Ravens.
Okay.
So you're a front runner, is what you're saying.
Nope, got no proof.
He's smart.
You just admitted it. What are you talking about? You just admitted it. You said you root for winners.
I've been there since birth. Look, they've been winning. Since I was a kid.
Yeah, all right.
You know, that's my fault.
I like where Jamal's going with this. I like where your head's at, Jamal. Oh, and let me ask you guys this: how beautiful was that Tom Brady loss to Tennessee? Did you guys watch this game by any chance?
I fell asleep midway through, but yeah, it was a great highlight.
Oh my God!
All praise to Lord God Almighty that Tom Brady is out of the playoffs. Thankfully.
Yeah. Jesus.
I'm hoping
this was
that
terrible,
was his last
man.
game.
Just in a football aspect, like he had no help, but at the same time, he didn't do himself any favors.
Nope.
But they didn't really stand a chance if they couldn't stop Derrick Henry, and they couldn't do it. Derrick Henry was like he was a beast. He was the best player, I think, on the field for that in that game, and it was kind of. I mean, he was clearly the best player on the field. I'm sorry, but like I don't think Tom Brady was going to be able to top that guy.
He was so good that he caused Jamal to hiccup.
Yeah.
See, but it does kind of question. Like I don't know what's going to go on with Tom Brady. It's kind of unclear, but
what's going on if he's 45 years old or whatever, you know?
They always re-sign him though, or they always keep him. So it's like if he wants to stay, I'm pretty sure they're going to keep him.
If you ask me, I think Bill Belichick might be willing to make the cold decision and move on, but Robert Kraft will never do it.
Mm-hmm. I think Bill Belichick made that decision 3 years ago.
I do too. I agree with you. I do. But I also think that Tom Brady'd have to be a freaking idiot to want to move to another team. Agreed. You will never recreate the magic ever. Agreed. And you're 40, whatever, 2 years old, whatever. That's just idiotic. So if he's going to play, it's going to be for the Bengals. He's going to go, bring in some, Asian massage ladies for Robert Kraft or something, and make Robert Kraft happy, or something. But I think you see Tom Brady. A, I think you see him in a Patriots uniform next season, and B, I don't think he's going to retire. I said that backwards, but regardless, I think Tom Brady is the Patriots next season. I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Show me some proof.
What are they going to do? Who are they going to bring in? What other quarterback do they have on the roster?
That's fair. They keep trading well. They're talented quarterbacks.
Yeah, they got your boy from Auburn. I forgot his name, but
I know Auburn. Finley. I mean, they got Finley, right?
No. Finley was from NC State.
Yeah,
the other guy. Sorry. Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about. Well, somebody help us out.
No, I do. Oh God.
I forgot his name, and it's gonna annoy me too. But while Steve is looking that up, I know we got a couple minutes, probably, or a few seconds to talk about the Minnesota Vikings, because I'm not gonna lie to you.
Oh God.
I did not see, even I had no clue that was gonna happen.
No,
I thought they
that
were
was
gonna lose all the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter going into overtime. I thought Jarrett Stidham. I thought the Vikings were losing.
Me too.
And Kirk surprised the shit out of me. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yep, he found a way to not choke in the big moment, didn't he? And it happened to poor Drew Brees' expense. But I'm with you.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's just that very surprising. I don't know. I guess I'm happy for him that he pulled it off. That was not the outcome I saw coming out of that game.
I mean, did New Orleans ever have a game not kind of decided by refs? This is getting ridiculous.
It happens to them. It
does.
The last two wasn't in their favor, but this one was more so. This was by their own doing. They played terrible.
Yes.
Am I wrong in rooting for Kirk Cousins to lose? I mean, I can't. I just can't.
You can root for whoever you want to root for, unless it's the Cowboys, and then you can go to hell and die.
I mean, you're not any different from most of the Redskins fans. I don't really have an issue with them. I'm not necessarily rooting for them. I'm in the aspect. I'm so far removed from that drama. Is more so I kind of like when teams perform well, especially underdogs. And so if he fits that mold, then those are the type of things I root for in the playoffs, except for the Ravens. They're the favorites, but just in general. So I mean, I understand though, Steve.
You have a better approach to it. But I gotta be honest, like I always am on this show. I shouldn't be like this, but I gotta be honest.
I shouldn't be like this.
I shouldn't, because you're right. It's in the past. But okay, let's real quick to put some context to it, because I know we're running out of time here. So the divisional round coming up: Vikings, 49ers, Titans, Ravens on Saturday, Texans, Chiefs, Seahawks, Packers on Sunday. I'm gonna go 49ers, Ravens on Saturday. I think the magic's over for Kirky. They're not going to match up with the 49ers. The Ravens, I think, will demolish the Titans. Nobody has any answer at all for Lamar Jackson. And then on Sunday, Chiefs, Texans, Seahawks, Packers. I think the most interesting matchup there is the Seahawks-Packers game. Yep. The Packers really aren't themselves this year. They're weirdly ineffective. The Seahawks rise to the occasion a lot. So I think that's a good take. That's going to be the game of the week. The Chiefs-Texans bores me, to be quite honest with you. Same. But I think the Chiefs will probably
Deshaun Watson, crush Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I like your take on the Packers-Seahawks thing, Steve. That's a pretty good take. I think I'll probably go with you. I think the Seahawks edge this one out. Chiefs, I think, crush the Texans. Ravens are going to demolish the Titans. And I think you're right as well about Vikings 49ers. I don't think Kirk matches up with
whatever errands I have to run over the weekend will be done during the Texans game.
Yeah.
Especially where you are, man. No one will be in anywhere.
Yeah, true.
Don't be too surprised if the Titans keep it close. I don't think they're going to get blown out. I think they're going to keep it close. I think they will have a chance to win. I don't think they will win, but I think they'll have a chance. We're talking about late in the game. They'll have their moments. But I do think the Ravens pull it off. I just think it'll be an entertaining game, is what I'm saying. I have the Niners winning against the Vikings as well. I don't really know about the Packers and Seahawks. I can't do that. I'm neutral. I'm staying out of it.
Yeah,
I got to give home field advantage to the Packers.
I didn't really make a prediction. I just said it was going to be a great game.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the Seahawks. I have a family member who's a Seahawks fan, so I'm going to go for them. But
I do too, and I hope he's listening to tell you. Matter of fact, that I think the Packers is going to win. So I hope you hear that, buddy. But no, I have no faith in the Texans beating the Chiefs on the road though.
0. The Texans got really lucky in that game, and Alex and I went back and forth on the Bills touchdown that wasn't, during that game. Let's not rehash it.
And I guess it was a safety, is what they're saying it actually would have been now.
Yeah. But regardless, I mean, neither team looked like they belonged in the playoffs. The Texans squeaked that game out, and it's the gravy train will end.
The only thing I'll say that we didn't cover, someone correct me if I'm wrong, a dome team still has never won outdoors in the playoffs, like in the history of the playoffs, right? There's like some weird stat about that.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
I don't know.
I had no clue.
So it doesn't bode well for the Vikings, is the point.
Somebody look that up and tell us if we're right about that.
Yeah. I remember something like that years ago, hearing it, and it was like 10 years ago, so it might have changed. Dome teams don't win on the road. It's like a weird thing.
Well, one thing for sure, Drew Brees is, I think, like he's like 1-6 or 1-6 on the road in the playoffs, something like that. So, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, maybe there's something to that. Okay, awesome. Well, then we will cut it off here. Our guest tonight was Robert Henson. That was, again, Mr._Henson51 on Twitter. We, of course, are the Hogsty, and we'll be back with you next week, as always. Take care.
Awesome.
Welcome to A Game of Two Scarves, the world's first footballing podcast, brought to you by the two great mates who just so happen to support the deadly rivals of Newcastle and Sunderland.
Each week we bring you a down-to-earth, informed discussion on our respective football clubs. Everything from post-match opinions to thoughts on who we thought did well, who didn't, and where we think the club needs to progress going forward.
We bring the odd guests along for the ride too, often from clubs outside of the region, so, as well as our own clubs, we do like to discuss the latest big news from around the world of the greatest game.
So sit back, put your allegiances to one side and enjoy the chat and humour of a Game of Two Scarves podcast.